What if one of the most familiar foods in the world carries a name that has nothing to do with where it actually comes from? A name shaped not by accuracy but by confusion, trade routes, and a completely different bird that most people have never even heard of. It sounds like a small mistake, but it's stuck for centuries and spread across languages and cultures. So why is it called a turkey if it's not from Turkey? The answer takes us back to a time when the world was still being mapped and people were making sense of new discoveries with limited information. Let's dive right in, right here, on History of Simple Things. The bird we now call a turkey is native to North America, where it had already been domesticated by indigenous peoples long before Europeans arrived. These birds were valued for their meat, feathers, and cultural importance, making them a well-established part of daily life. When Spanish explorers reached the Americas in the early 1500s, they encountered this unfamiliar species and brought it back to Europe. At the time, Europeans had never seen anything quite like it, so they had no existing name or category to assign. Instead, they relied on comparisons to birds they already knew, which often led to inaccurate assumptions. This lack of familiarity set the stage for confusion, as the turkey entered Europe without a clear identity in the existing system of naming animals. Long before the American turkey arrived in Europe, another bird had already gained attention through trade, the guinea fowl, native to Africa. This bird was imported into Europe through routes connected to merchants associated with the Ottoman Empire. In England, these traders were commonly referred to as turkey merchants, so the bird became known as the turkey cock. When the American turkey later appeared, people noticed similarities in size and overall appearance between the two birds. Rather than recognizing them as entirely different species, they reused the familiar name. Over time, turkey cock was shortened to simply turkey, transferring the label from one bird to another. This moment of mistaken identity played a major role in giving the turkey its misleading name. During the 16th century, people in Europe often named goods based on how they arrived rather than where they truly came from. Trade networks were complex, and items frequently passed through multiple regions before reaching their final destination. Because of this, products were often associated with the last major trading hub rather than their place of origin. Since many exotic goods entered Europe through territories connected to the Ottoman Empire, they were commonly linked to Turkey, regardless of their actual source. The turkey followed this pattern. Instead of being recognized as a bird from the Americas, it became tied to the trade routes that introduced it to Europeans. This habit of naming based on association rather than accuracy allowed the incorrect label to spread and persist. The confusion surrounding the turkey's name wasn't limited to English, as other languages developed their own versions of the same misunderstanding. In French, the bird is called dinda, which comes from poule dinde, meaning chicken from India. This reflects the common European belief that newly encountered lands were connected to India. Similar naming patterns appear in other languages, linking the turkey to India or other distant regions that had little to do with its true origin. These differences show that the confusion was widespread, not isolated. Across cultures, people tried to interpret unfamiliar animals using incomplete knowledge of geography. Instead of arriving at a single accurate name, the turkey ended up with multiple identities, all shaped by different assumptions about where it came from. The naming of the turkey highlights how limited geographic understanding was during the age of exploration. Maps were still incomplete, communication between regions was slow, and explorers themselves often misunderstood where they had traveled. When new animals and goods arrived in Europe, there was no reliable system for identifying their origins with certainty. People relied on guesswork, visual similarities, and trade connections to assign names. Once a name became widely used, it spread quickly and became difficult to replace. Even when better information became available, the original terms often remained in use. The turkey's name reflects this pattern, showing how early assumptions could become permanently embedded in language even after they were proven incorrect. By the time Europeans gained a clearer understanding of global geography, the name Turkey had already become firmly established. It was widely used in trade, conversation, and written records, making it difficult to replace. Language tends to favor consistency over correction, especially when a word is already familiar and widely understood. Changing the name would have required a coordinated effort across different regions and languages, which was unlikely to happen. As a result, the original mistake was preserved. Today, the word turkey is used without question, even though it does not reflect the bird's true origin. It remains an example of how language can hold on to historical misunderstandings long after the facts have become clear. The story behind the turkey's name is not really about the bird itself, but about how people once understood the world around them. Faced with unfamiliar animals and distant lands, they relied on trade routes, assumptions, and limited knowledge to make sense of what they were seeing. In that process, mistakes were inevitable, and some of those mistakes became permanent. The turkey is one of the clearest examples of this, carrying a name that reflects confusion rather than accuracy. Even today, the word continues to be used without question, quietly preserving a moment in history when the world was still being pieced together, and certainty was often out of reach. Thank you for watching. If you have suggestions for our next video, feel free to share them in the comments below. We'll be sure to give you an acknowledgement for your contribution. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of simple things. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories woven through the smallest details.